Hi there and welcome to another video. In this video, you're going to see how to do a Debian 12 initial server setup, and I will do it on Vultr. So this is a Debian 12 initial server setup for Vultr. If you don't have a Vultr server, I'll provide a promo code link in the description, and this will give you $300 of free credit from Vultr. This is for new Vultr accounts only. Let's get started, and I'm going to start by deploying a server. To deploy a server on Vultr, just click there on go to deploy, then deploy new server. I want to use a shared CPU server, and I want a region in Europe. I can go with Stockholm in Sweden. Then the server type, so I'll go with high frequency or high performance. High frequency, I think these are Intel servers. So high performance, at least here you can choose whether you want to use Intel or AMD. I'm going to click on AMD to use AMD. And then I'm going to go with 2 virtual CPUs and 2 GB RAM. And then I will configure. So to configure, you just need to set up your operating system. So just a side note, I will do a tutorial for how to set up WordPress Open Lightspeed. If you're interested in that, follow me, and when that video comes up, you'll see it. So Debian 12, and then server settings, SSH key. I'm not going to use an SSH key for now. We're going to add our SSH key later, and therefore I'm just going to leave that blank, and this will allow me to log in with a password. Startup script, firewall group, I'm going to leave those as well. Server host name. Now the host name is an important one. Make sure you add a fully qualified domain name as a host name, because changing your host name on Vultr is a nightmare. So just make sure you add it here right now before deploying your server. I will enable IPv6, and our server is $18, but it comes to $21.60. That's because auto backups are enabled, and auto backups are charged at 20% of the server, which comes to $360. All right. That pretty much ends our server configuration. You can just check to confirm location Sweden, CPU, 2 CPU, 2 GB RAM. Most importantly, the images, Debian 12, and then deploy. So I'm going to give it a few minutes, like 3 minutes for it to deploy. Then we'll come back and you'll see how you can SSH into your new server. So while this is happening, if you're on Windows, make sure you download Git. Just search for Git and install it on Windows, then open up Git Bash. That's the terminal you should use to follow along with me if you're on Windows. On a Mac and Linux, just open any terminal. For me, I will be using Terminator. So if you're on Ubuntu, you can install Terminator, sudo apt install Terminator. Now, probably our server is ready. I'll click on it. Our server details are here. I will copy the IP, SSH root shift at SSH root at Control Shift V to paste on Linux terminal, and you can do Shift insert to paste in Git Bash. Enter. Yes. Copy the password. Control Shift V to enter. You won't see the password when you paste it in, so just press enter. There we go. Now we are logged in. The next step, let's come to our Debian 12 initial server setup, and I have added the link in the description, so following along will be easier. So let's get started. We've already logged into the server. Let's just update the server, and then we're going to install vim, curl, wget, sudo, and htop. This is just for all of us to be on the same level, because if maybe you're following along on a different cloud provider, you're going to find that some of these probably are not already installed. But on Vultr, I think all of these are already installed. Enter. Control L to clear the screen. Let's go to the next step. So the next step is to create an admin user, and you do this because the Linux root user is a common user. Everyone knows that on Linux, root is there. So what most people do is you create an admin user that you can use to manage the server. You add them to the sudo group, you add them to the sudoers group, and then you disable the root user from logging into the server. so they can't SSH into the server. So in this case, we're going to add the user, and the username is that. You can give it whichever name you prefer. And once the user is added, you add a password for them. You're going to add this user to the sudo group, and that is going to give them permissions to administer the server as an administrator. So I'm going to copy all of that, and I'm just going to use that, but you can change the name to whatever you prefer. Control-Shift-V, enter. Give this user a strong password. Make sure it's a password that you can remember, because if you forget it, you may not be able to log in again. So for these others, I'm just going to press enter to skip them. Is this information correct? Press enter to confirm. Control L to clear the screen. So the next step is to test that user. The user is created and the user has been added to the sudoers group. So I can test this user, and I'm just going to copy this command. At the same time, I've just opened up VS Code, and I will be pasting things here that I will need to use and edit. In fact, let me just paste it here, and the new user we have said is your new user. And I will copy, Control-Shift-V to paste. Actually, I need to open this in my computer. This is not on the server. So let me open a new terminal window. And since I'm using Terminator, I can open a new window using Control-Shift-O. Down here, you see we now have a new terminal. And I will paste Control-Shift-V to paste SSH with your new user. We want to test if we can do sudo commands. Enter. Control L to clear the screen. So you can do any sudo command you want just to test if this user can use sudo. So if I do sudo apt update, you see it doesn't give me any warning. It just asks for the password, and that's a good sign. There you go. So now you can use this user to manage your server. So I'm going to come up here and I'll do Control-Shift-W to close that. Control L, clear the screen. So let's continue on with this new user. Let's go back and see what is the next step after creating the admin user. Let us set up SSH key authentication for the new user. So the first step is to generate the key, then you'll add the key to your server, and then after that, you're going to log in. We're going to see how we can log in with a key. So this part is done on your local computer. You can see right here, I'm logged into my server, so I can open another terminal. So I can just open my normal terminal and use this on my local computer. So I'll just come back here to the Debian post, Debian 12 setup post. First, we need to generate a key. So to generate a key, we are going to generate a key and store the key inside of this directory. So first of all, we create the directory and then we generate the key. And you know what? I can put these commands together. So that's why I opened up VS Code. So I can put them together so I don't have to type too much. So there you go. First of all, we create it, then we generate a key. So to generate a key here, we're generating a key of type ed25519 key, and the key will be stored there. And this will be the name of the key. So the next time you create another key, maybe for a different server, you can just come in here and change the name maybe to my SSH key 2, or you can create a different directory and create another key in that directory. So this is why I do it this way, so that you can have multiple keys and all of them are stored in different directories. Public key to your server, copy the key to your server. So to copy the key, you're going to need SSH copy ID with the identity of the public key and your user and password there. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to do all this in one command, and it's just going to give me prompts to do various things here and there. But I can add that one here as well. I'll run them together. So SSH copy ID, I'll just remove that. SSH copy ID, our key will definitely be called that once we generate it. So SSH copy ID -I Control V. So that will be a public key. So we can add .pub here. When you're adding the key to the server, it is .pub. And then the host, I pasted the host here. So we are adding this key for this user, for the user we've just created. Control V. I'll run this together. And this is run on your local computer. Control Shift V. Enter, enter. So the first step, the key is being generated, and that is why you're being asked for a passphrase. A passphrase is a password for your key. You can add it, you can leave it out. But if you want more security for your key, you add a passphrase so that if you're logging in with the key, first of all, you'll be asked for the passphrase. In this case, I'm just going to skip this by pressing enter. Press enter again, and the key is now generated. So it's saying something about error, too many arguments, SSH copy ID. Let's see. So at least the key is generated. If you see that the key is already generated, now the issue is coming up here under SSH copy ID -I. That is our key. Oh yeah. So I copied SSH here. We didn't need this. That's the only error there. Okay. You probably saw that. That's the only error there that's giving us this problem. So the key has been generated. The steps, only this one has the problem. So we're going to come back. I'm going to do Control L and then Control Shift V, enter, enter. So it's going to try and add the key and then ask you for the password for your key, for your user. So enter the password for the user that you're adding the key for. There we go. Now our user, now the SSH key for our user has been added. So the next step, let's try to log in with the user. So to log in with your SSH key, you are just going to, let's just copy that. So we added the key for this user. Copy, Control Shift V, the identity of the key. This is the identity of the key. The one without .pub. That's the identity of our key for logging in. I will copy this, bring it to my terminal, Control L to clear the screen. Let's log in with our new key. There we go. We can now log into our server. So I'm just going to close that. I don't need to use this window. I prefer to use Terminator. So this server has already logged me out here because it was dormant for some time. So I'm just going to open up a new window and I will log in with my key here, Control Shift V, enter. So you see now you don't need to log in with your password, you just log in with the private key. So I'll close the upper window, Control Shift W to close the window in Terminator, Control L to clear the screen, and let's continue and see what is next. Now the next step is to disable, we've already logged in, is to disable the root user from logging in. And usually other tutorials, you'll find that the SSH configuration file is edited directly. But in this case, I'm going to create a custom file here. And in this file, I'm going to add my SSH configuration that I need. In this case, it will be password authentication, no, and permit root login, no. And then after that, we'll expect to restart SSH. Even before I do that, there's something down here. Inside of this directory, there's another file that comes by default. It is created by Cloud Init on Vultr. So I'm sure Vultr has it. I think I saw one on Hetzner and DigitalOcean as well. I would have to confirm. But what I'm going to do so that this does not affect my configuration is I'm just going to rename it from cloudinit.conf and I'm going to remove the .conf. And just by removing the .conf, it will make sure that these settings are not loaded with SSH configuration. So I'm just going to Control Shift V, enter. All right, so now that that is renamed, we can create our own configuration file. So even before I do it, we can actually see what we're doing there. I'm just going to clean all of this. We check inside there. if I do an ls inside of this directory, you'll see now we have that, but we want to create our configuration file, enter. Once you create it, if you do an ls in that directory, you'll see now we have our mycustom.conf. You can call it whatever you want. That's just an SSH configuration file that will be loaded along with the default configurations for SSH. So after doing this, we can try to log in. We can try to log in and see if we can log in without a password, and if the root user can also log in. So copy that. Terminal. I'll open a new terminal window here. Let's see if this is going to allow us to log in. Enter. Public key permission denied. You can see that. And the root user also trying to log in. Root, enter. All right, so now the only way to log into the server is via SSH key. And if you want to log in, you'd have to enter -I, the identity of your key right there. So if you don't know how to find this, you can just copy the entire line, paste it somewhere and keep it there. If you need to log in, you copy and paste. And that will make it easier for you to log in if you don't know how to get these details just by typing them. Control L. Close the window, we don't need it. What is next on our Debian setup? The next step is to enable Firewall. So if you're going to install a control panel like strcp, you don't really need to set up the Firewall. You can skip this step. If you're installing something else that doesn't set up the Firewall for you, then you have to set up the Firewall yourself. And the easiest way to set up the Firewall on Debian or even Ubuntu is to use UFW. So you'll just install it. If it is not already installed, you'll install it and then you enable it. And then you can allow whatever you want to allow. For example, in this case, I've allowed SSH, I've allowed HTTP, and I've allowed HTTPS. If you need to allow a specific port, and we're going to do this within the next 2 minutes probably, you can allow a port like that. So when we change the SSH port, we're going to allow a specific port. So I'll just copy this as an example. Install UFW, enable UFW, allow specific ports. Control-Shift-V, enter. Confirm that you want to disrupt your network, and this may log you out if you disable specific ports that you need to use. So enter Y and then enter. Control L. And if I was to do sudo UFW status, so you can check which ports have been allowed using this command UFW status, sudo UFW status. So you can see port 80, port 443, port 22 have been allowed. So Control L to clear the screen, and this is going to give us a nice segue into the next part, and the next part is changing the SSH port. While we're still on the issue of UFW, we can allow our SSH port, and I'm going to use this port. You can use any port that you prefer, just make sure the port is not being used by any other service. Control-Shift-V to enter to allow this port. And if I was to do UFW status, you're going to see now port 7020 has been allowed. Let's continue on into allowing the SSH port. So up there we created our custom SSH configuration file. So we don't need to create it again. We're just going to add this port 7020. So -A simply appends it to that, appends this line to our file. And then it's going to restart SSH. And that is going to enable our SSH port. So if you changed the port up there, make sure you change it down here as well. Control-Shift-V, enter. So if I was to cut this file, cut to view the content, Control-Shift-C, Control-Shift-V, enter. You can see that the port has been added there. Let's try again to log in using the default ports. So if I try to log in, you can see connection refused. Try again, connection refused. So to log in, you have to enter the port -P, and our port is 7020. Enter. There you go. So these are very important security things, and you can see why they are important. If your server is being attacked and someone is trying to gain access, they'll they'll probably be using a bot. So if their bot is only using port 22, then you're already saved from that. Let's see what's remaining. And this is just showing you how to log in, SSH username, the IP, and the identity of your file, and the -p at the end. Now create a swap file. I put everything in just one line to make it easy for you. You don't have to run one command after the other, right? But just to explain it, you're going to enable that to G, so you can change the size of your swap file. And maybe you want to use for G instead of 1 GB, I mean. You can change that. I'm going to copy this and then Ctrl+Shift+V, and you can also change the instances where the file is called Debian swap file. If you want to change that, you can change that as well, this one. And you just change all the instances where the Debian swap file is. You can change the name, it doesn't really matter, but if you want to change it, you can change it. So first of all, we allocate 2 GB to that file. Then we change the permission of that file. And then we make this file into a swap file, and then you turn on the swap, and then we add it so that it can persist. So this will just add it in our etc fstub. So when it is added in etc fstub, when you reboot, the swap will still be recognized. So that's why you add it in the etc fstub. And then I'm just going to enter to create the 2 GB of swap file. So now if I was to do free -h, you'll see that. So, okay, it's like there was already some swap before I created mine, and you can see it's just been added to that. So the total swap file. So actually this is a good thing. If Vultr automatically creates the swap for you, you don't need to create it. I wasn't aware of this. Seems like they automatically created it. Right, changing the host name. We don't need to do this because if you followed my guidance on adding your host name, you don't need to add it again. The host name is that. So most importantly, you just need to check if vi etc hosts has that. So as long as the loopback IP has it, then that's not a problem. We can leave it at that. Most importantly, make sure you change that setting in Vultr when deploying your server. Add your host name, then Shift-ZQ to close out of that. Let's come back and see what is next. Now, the next part is setting up automatic updates. Now, I'm not going to do this because I have a really nice video but it's going to show you how to set this up and even set up for third-party repositories. So I'm just going to edit that and attach it to this. Of course, you'll find it in this video. I will attach it to this. I'll just add it to the end of this video. Set up automatic updates. So the unattended upgrades package is what is used for automating updates in Ubuntu and Debian. So that's what I'm going to install. So we are going to first of all install it and install it with that. And then we are going to enable automatic updates. And this, by running this, you're going to generate this file, and you can edit this file to enable automatic updates. And these are just what is inside of the file that you'll be able to edit. I'm going to copy everything there. Just click there to copy. And I'll do Ctrl+Shift+V, enter. And then I'll accept, yes. All right, so this is the last command, and the last command was to open that file. So I just ran them together instead of running one at a time. I put them together. If I scroll down in this section where there is unattended upgrades, I can delete these 2 lines, and that's because I want to update the apps as well. So any applications that are installed using sudo apt install for the default Debian repositories, I can update them with that. Even the proposed updates, I'm going to allow that as well. So I can just delete the comment. Delete the comment. Right now, even if I do escape and then Shift-ZZ to save, so I'm sure automatic updates have been set up. So just as simple as that, your automatic update for default Debian has been set up. Now, what if you have third-party repositories, right? Like right now, I don't have any third-party repositories. I've just installed the server. Let's say I add Kubernetes. The best example I can show with this is Kubernetes. So if I come here to my site as well, instead of going to the documentation, I can add the Kubernetes repository, install kubeadm, kubectl, and all those applications. These are just for demos. They're not important for you to know what they're for. So I'm going to install kubeadm, kubectl. So somewhere here, we add the repository for Kubernetes. So I'm going to copy this entire thing. It's going to add the repository for Kubernetes, and it's also going to install kubelet, kubeadm, and all those. And I'm going to use that to show you how to auto update third-party repositories. Control L, Control Shift V to paste, and I will run that. Even right now, if I was to, let's go back to Debian 12 initial setup. Right now, if I was to try and dry run the unattended upgrades. So I'm just going to copy that. We're going to see that no packages found can be upgraded, no pending auto removals. And that is not true because you saw that I installed Kubernetes. So next, let's see how we can set up third-party repositories. And in this case, the third-party repository that we have is Kubernetes. So the first thing, let me open up VS Code. There, auto update third-party repositories. So the default for Debian, if you look at this, let me copy this because I'm going to need it a bunch of times. Oh, and something else before I forget, this thing usually just logs me out if I don't do something for a while. So let me just leave htop running there for a moment. And this is just to make sure that the server doesn't auto log me out. So I'm just going to come here and Control V, I'm going to paste that in there, and Control C, Control Shift V. So you can see this is the default of how the distros are being labeled or being identified. Let's see how we can get our Kubernetes repository to look like that. Escape, Shift, ZZ, and I will leave htop running. I'm just running htop so it doesn't log me out. So we've established that this is how the others are being labeled in the unattended upgrades file. So let's come here and I'm going to paste that in there. That is a reference that we're going to use to edit and make sure our Kubernetes as well can also be added there so that it is updated. So the first thing we need to do, let's see all the repositories that are available on our Ubuntu, that are available on our Debian, I mean. So I will come here and I will list, Control C to get out of htop, and then Control Shift V to paste. And we want to see all the repositories that are available here. So you can see all these are Debian related. We don't care for the ones from debian.org. Those will be updated. The one we care about are the ones from Kubernetes. So we are going to copy this one, Kubernetes in release. So go for the in release, copy, come back. I will paste that in there. And let's come back here. And now we want to find out information about that repository. So I'm going to go up to here, copy. So this was an example I just added there with HTTP, but of course we don't have HTTP installed in this case. So I'm just going to use this. We want to see the file, the information for this repository. So that's why we are cutting to read the repository details. So let's come back, Control L to clear the screen, Control Shift V, enter. All right, so scroll all the way up because the only thing we are interested in here is from there to there. So I will copy that. I'm just going to paste the details there. We are going to make those details match this. All right, so origin, what are we told is the origin there? Copy the whole thing, origin, copy the whole origin from there, and then origin is equals to where Debian is, replace with the one for Kubernetes. And then after that, we need the code name. Code name, what are we told is the code name here? Code name we're being told is deb. So let's come back here, and where code name is, remove everything before the comma and then replace with deb. And then label, what is a label? The label we're being told is ISV Kubernetes stable version 130. So copy, and we're going to replace that with that. Control V. And now the moment of testing. So this is a part where this is why I chose to use Kubernetes, because you can see the repository is 130, but let me make the repository for this as 131. And we are going to change the repository for Kubernetes to 131. And you'll see that auto upgrades will help us upgrade it. Okay. So right now we've installed version 130, kubectl, kubeadm, and kubectl. It doesn't matter what those are. It's just that we're using those applications. We're using those packages as examples. So this is what you need to copy. So for every item that you want to auto update, make sure you find out its details and then you replace them. You replace them for that. Okay. Just like I've done with this. So I'll come back here, and I want to first of all open this file, the unattended upgrades file, copy. Let's come back. I will do Control C to get out of htop, Control L, Control Shift V, and then enter. And then let's come to that point, and I'm just going to press tab. Before I press tab, let me go into insert mode. So to go into insert mode in Vim, I'm just pressing I, then I'll press tab so that we can get some indentation there. I'll go back here and I will copy that. Control Shift V to paste. So the one for Kubernetes has been added. So right now, if you have others to add, just paste them after that. And that's how you do it for this file. So for this file, we are done with it. I'm just going to press escape and then Shift ZZ to save and exit. After that, the next thing, of course, is the moment of testing. So if I was to do the unattended upgrades dry run, copy. So the dry run, just as the name suggests, it dry runs it. So Control Shift V and then enter. So take a note of this. Okay. Look down there. You're going to see no packages found that can be upgraded, right? And that is true because our Kubernetes is still at version 130. So let's replace the Kubernetes version from 130 and let's make the new Kubernetes version. Let us say that we change the Kubernetes repository from version 130 to version 131. So if I change it to version 131, you'll see that now there is something to upgrade. So I've changed version 130 there and then enter. Kubernetes repository has been updated. So let's do apt update and check if, okay, so now that I can see 5 packages can be upgraded, this means that unattended upgrades can also identify those packages that need to be updated, but not that they can't be upgraded because Kubernetes usually hold these items, so they're not updated. If you want to update Kubernetes, you have to explicitly update it manually. So there we go, enter. And if I run that, you can see that it is telling me that the list of kept packages can't be calculated. So let me do this, okay? Let me, instead of dry run, let me just do debug without dry run. Enter. And now you'll see that, so I did debug without dry run because dry run is not going to show you packages that have been held back. So here you can see that kubeadm is marked as held back, but it has an update. So this means that unattended upgrades can actually update the third-party repositories. So right now, if I was to unhold these packages, and this is just a Kubernetes thing, but if this was another package, it would have automatically updated those items. So let's say, for example, that I come here and I unhold these packages. Okay, so you can see Kubernetes usually hold them back, so they are not updated automatically, or when you do apt update, apt upgrade, it doesn't update those items. Unhold, so you can just do sudo apt mark unhold, and this is going to unhold these packages. All right, so the hold on them has been cancelled. Right now, if I was to do sudo unattended upgrade debug, it's going to update those packages. So what can you see? All upgrades have been installed. Any repository that you add in that file will be updated, and you've seen how to get to that point. Everything you need is on this post. On the Debian 12 initial server setup, at the end of the day, you have to do it for any repository that you add, but at least now you're sure that all your repositories will be updated automatically, not just the Debian repositories. Now you know how to automatically update all your Debian packages, all your Debian repositories. All right, that should cover how to set up Debian 12 on Vultr. You can follow along with any cloud provider, but I chose to use Vultr for this because I want to actually create another video for DigitalOcean doing the same thing, and another one for Contabo, Hetzner, like that. Okay, so that's it. If you don't have a server with Vultr and you want to try them, my link is in the description. If you do and you end up using and you set up, and eventually I might get something from that, that really helps me a lot, because this is all I do. I don't have any other job. This is all I do. So if I'm able to get something from this, I'm grateful. If you have any question, you're stuck anywhere, just let me know. I will see how to assist you. And that's it for this one. If you have any questions, let me know.